Once all of the images are imported into your file, you're going to need to trace over them to get them to actually be curves within the Rhino environment. So the biggest mistake that I usually see here is people go up to something like the spline tool or the polyline tool, and they just go ahead and they start going through here and they start just tracing this line. And then if we turn ortho off, we try to get this sort of approximated, and then we keep going. So the important thing to remember here is that at some point that this was drawn as that was a straight line and that was a straight line and this was a perfect fillet and this was a perfect fillet. So if we take some liberties here and we start to draw some construction lines instead of just going in and tracing just the outline of this, we'll get a more accurate and a more clean representation at the end of the day with this. So you're going to have images that are blurry, images that look like there's a little bit of wave in some of these lines, but if it's more or less a straight line, I would draw it as a single straight line. So what we're going to do here is just draw some lines that are arbitrarily larger than they need to be, going in both directions. And then what we can do is we'll just go ahead and copy these to a bunch of different locations within the file. So obviously if you have a file that's not as rectilinear as this, your construction lines will look a little different, or you might not be able to put as many construction lines. So here we'll put a couple here, and we're going to leave out the columns for now. I'll work on those in a second. Okay, so those are done in that direction, and obviously once you place them, you can go back and you can go ahead and move those around if they didn't hit exactly where they need to be. And then we'll go ahead and we're going to copy this over. Okay, so we have a good amount of construction lines here. So now we can start the actual process of drawing. So what I would say here is let's start with this big form here, and I'm going to go ahead and take this rectangle tool, and I'm just going to grab from that corner to that corner, and then we can actually go ahead and click on the construction curves that we have on the outside of these, and we can just go ahead and type hide. And then if we want those back, we can type show. You can also do this via layers. So if we go ahead and click that rectangle that we just drew, and we right click and go to change object layer, you can also go down here and click this layering tool, and you can change the layer that way. Then we can turn off all of the construction curves in one shot. We can go ahead and rename this as construction curves, and we'll name this final curves. So we can go ahead and turn that off, and then we'll see that we just have a rectangle there. So what we need to do now is we need to look at what this fillet is. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. One way that I like to do it is if we go ahead and just draw a line temporarily roughly where we think that fillet is going to end. So we can go ahead and move this over a little bit. Then if we measure the distance here from that corner to here, we get 3'4". So if we type fillet radius, and we'll go ahead and type 3'4", and we're going to fillet that curve to that curve, you can see we get pretty close. You can go ahead and mess around with this and tighten the radius if you want a little bit. So if we want, we can go in and do another fillet, and let's say we go 3'6", which would be 3.5, and then we tighten that up. So that looks a lot better. Then we can hit spacebar or enter to redo that command, and we can go ahead and do that on this one as well. So now you see that we have this curve that's approximating the outer edge of that. We can go ahead and delete this construction line that we made. Then instead of doing the same exact thing for that inside one, what we can do is we can just do an offset for this. So what we'll do here is we'll take a distance, and we're just going to go from the inside point here, and then if we make sure in our snaps down here that our perpendicular snap is on, we can measure over to here, and we see that this is 1 foot. So if we do an offset, it's going to ask us the distance. We can say 1 foot, then we can click here and we can go ahead and offset that. So you see that that will then give us our inside curve. So that's the basics for that one. You can go through and do very similar things here. So here, obviously, we're not dealing with the fillets. So we can just go in and we can draw rectangles on these. Make sure your intersection snap is on here. That'll help you quite a bit. So that'll make things look like that. I'm going to go ahead and find. So then basically we'll be left with that once we get rid of our picture frame. So the next thing that we're going to do is columns. So ideally, in most cases, your columns will be on some kind of grid. So again, we're going to draw some temporary construction lines. We're going to approximate where the centers of these are in both directions. And what that's going to do is wherever those lines intersect, that will give us our center point of all of those columns. So we'll click on that. Then we'll draw a vertical construction line. We'll go ahead and we'll move that over to approximate the center. That's a little. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take our circle tool from over here. We're going to click here, and then we're going to drag and drop that. Then we're going to do a copy, and we can copy it from this intersection point, and we can go ahead and hit all of these intersection points going around. Whoops. Do a copy from the intersection point. And then when we go ahead and delete our construction lines, then we have our columns in place. So you're going to go through and do this for all of your plans and all of your sections, and then we can move forward and start to construct the actual 3D model from these.